Welcome to another episode of the Bleeding Edge of Digital Health. Really excited about today's guest. We've got a company called Ediatx that we're going to be featuring with CEO and founder Torrey Smith and Chief Business Officer Chris Green. Chris and Torrey, how you guys doing today?
Fantastic, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. No, it was we've been trying to pull this together now since LSI, which was back in March when you and I met, Torrey, and really excited about having you guys on the show and featuring what is going to be an incredibly exciting category creating technology. You could call this any number of things. I'll call it micro robots in the human body for telemedicine. But we'll get into the tech and we'll leave that up to the audience to decide what they want to call it, because I think there's countless applications for the technology and it's going to address a number of different use cases. But Torrey, let's get started as we typically do with just the origin story of the company. What compelled you to start the company?
Well, thanks, Mike. I mean, to me, the idea of tiny robots in the body is just something that we are surrounded by. If you watch a science fiction movie, maybe as a kid, a lot of us can remember Fantastic Voyage or the movie Inner Space. Moving forward, there were movies like The Matrix with scary little bugs crawling into your body. And so you can read books about nanoprobes going in your bloodstream. And so, our zeitgeist is kind of like awash with this concept that maybe one day we'll have tiny nano robots to fix diseases. But then the question is just, what are we doing about it today? And so with Endiatx and with the little PillBot here, we are simply trying to take the first step on that long journey, right? I know that Chris and I won't be around to see the end of the journey, but if we can be a part of getting it kicked off, then we get really excited.
Yeah. And I mentioned it a second ago, there's, a gazillion different applications for the technology, but, let's just talk about the initial product that you guys are working on. What's the use case? What's the problem you're trying to solve specifically?
Chris, what do you think about that?
PillBot is designed specifically to work in the human stomach. We call that the beachhead market because that's the easiest thing to access to prove the validity of our technology. So motorization separates PillBot from all other pill cameras that have existed to date. All you have to do is drink water to create a fluid volume in the stomach and swallow PillBot, and it maneuvers in the stomach. So to begin with, identifying and catching early stomach cancers and other serious pathology, or clearing people from pathology so that they don't have to undergo an EGD, right? A full upper endoscopy.
I like to tell people in basic terms that it's very similar to a little moving eyeball for the human stomach. And
Right.
We got pretty excited when gastroenterologists were saying, we go through a fair amount of work to get to a point where they have 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes of time to look around in your stomach during that EGD. And we thought, hey, wait a minute, what if we could create 5 to 10 to 15 minutes of looking around, but do it in a new way that might actually obviate the need for that hospital visit?
Yeah, we talked last week about just the system as constructed right now, where if a patient goes in to their doctor and says they've got pain or whatever, it's the number of steps that patient has to go through in order to ultimately get to that EGD procedure where they can actually go put the patient to sleep or under conscious sedation and actually go in and take a look inside the body. It's arduous for the patient. I went through it. I told you guys that, you go in, you see your GP, then you they refer you to a specialist. They put you on antacids. That doesn't work. And then you got to go through all of the authorizations just to go in and take a look. So something as simple as just swallowing this with a bunch of water and not only being able to get inside the body and take a look, but also to be able to do it remotely poses a really compelling value proposition that I'm excited to get into. What Let's jump into the tech a little bit. You showed the device. Do you want to maybe put that up on the screen so people can see just how small it is? How big is that in terms of like millimeters?
Sure. So what I'm holding in my hands is the latest prototype. This thing is actually sub 12 millimeters. I think we're like 11.85 by 21 millimeter length. This is a crazy prototype. Our actual bot that we've been swallowing is a hair bigger. It's 13 millimeters by 30 millimeters. Um, Pretty hefty capsule, but there are actually some pill cameras that are even longer than that.
And the big differentiation here is, and we're going to do a demo here in a minute, but um, this has an ability to be propelled within the body from outside the body, basically from like an Xbox controller or something like that.
That
It
that yeah, go for it, Chris.
it's motorized, right? So the maneuverability allows a doctor to aim it specifically to look at something in the interior of the body, right? That's what fundamentally separates it from all of the other pill cameras. And again, when people say pill cameras, they're talking about passive pill cameras. This
Right.
is act.
What we are really trying to do is take a form factor that we're pretty well used to now from passive pill cameras, which we pay huge respect to,
And fit stuff into it.
fit more stuff into it, right? If we can get propulsion in there, if we can get this live video feed, if we can get real-time three-dimensional navigation, all of a sudden this starts to look a little bit more like an endoscope, and that's really where we really get excited.
Yeah, the big difference there being, if I were to just swallow a pill cam, then you're reliant on the movement, the natural movement of the body to hope that it's going to put the camera in a position to see what you want it to
Well,
see, correct?
it just won't be used for an upper endoscopy, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we have maybe 70, 72 million upper endoscopies performed every year. And we're actually designing PillBot to go into that population and be either a device that can do the procedure itself, if the the capabilities are enough for the doctor's intended use that day. But if it can't do the entire procedure, we want PillBot to be the screening tool that gets you qualified for an upper endoscopy much earlier,
And the
Right.
follow-up.
and the follow-up tool, right? And so what we're trying to do is create a device that in the office of a typical gastroenterologist, it turns them into a superstar, and it's something they can reach for every day. And if we look at the passive pill camera model, they are amazingly useful, but unfortunately, in a relatively limited part of the GI tract, specifically in the small bowel, that's where passive capsules are actually perfect, because the
Right.
small bowel is maybe 20, 30 feet of kinked tubing with peristaltic motion. That's where a little camera pill can actually get a really good job done as it works its way through. It's hard to get a scope in there, and I'm not sure we would easily swim in that kind of environment. However, as Chris was alluding to, a passive pill camera tumbling through the stomach just can't really give a GI an effective tool. And so that unfortunately, pill cameras are only reached for in a small percentage of typical GI patients.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of health equity, health population considerations here too. I mean, the ability to get a world class diagnostic test done in certain rural parts of the country is is now
Of
possible with a technology like this, where theoretically a physician at Cedar Sinai could be driving the device. They could swallow this in the comfort of their own home and drive the device, get an immediate look inside the patient's stomach, um, and the patient never even had to leave the comfort of their own home. Is that ultimately the end game?
So it was actually pretty interesting. Like, we founded this company in early 2019. 2019, obviously a pre-COVID year. And then as soon as we were ready to start swallowing PillBot around June of 2020, we were well into the COVID epidemic. And all of a sudden, the value proposition of telemedicine came to the forefront of the big conversation.
Yeah.
And we started to realize, rather than making a tool that is just more convenient or, as an engineer, super cool and opens up a new category, we
Right.
started to realize if you could take maybe the 100 million hospital visits if we say like 5 visits, for some people getting EGDs, if you take 70 million EGDs, you have hundreds of millions of hospital visits. And we start to think we could probably turn 100 million hospital visits per year into thin air, with this
Right.
concept of digital health through telemedicine.
Well, and that plays into the shortage of physicians and mid levels that we're going to have, and the the burden and strain on the in the hospital, but really all acute care settings right now. That would have a massive impact. So that's really exciting. What indications, you guys have PillBot one, which you showed? What indications are you going for there? Obviously, you're starting with endoscopy of the stomach. Is there anything else you guys are looking at for that initial product?
Well, specifically, when we tell FDA, like, hey guys, we would like to swim a tiny robot around inside millions of people, we get to have a very interesting conversation. And so, to start this adventure off, I don't think we want to claim that we're making the world's best endoscope. I'd like to simply say that we're making the world's first virtual endoscope. And so, let's not necessarily be the best tool ever made to begin with. Let's start with basic things like visualization of the stomach to see if there's any gnarly pathology that would warrant a hospital-based upper endoscopy. We would
Sure.
love to go in there to look for lesions and ulcers, maybe gastritis. You can see inflammation signs. Anything that might be readily visually available is definitely something that PillBot might be able to do some good work on in the stomach. And I guess Chris and I can say we're excited that while we are, screening the world's belly aches, my hope is that once in a while we'll catch an early stomach cancer um, earlier than you might otherwise catch it, and be able to offer the oncology community, a head start. Maybe we could
Yep.
actually give that patient a much higher cure rate. And that's the exciting thing that happens in parallel with going after all the tummy aches.
Yeah,
Yep.
I guess you could say there are two large tiers of democratization and equity. There's in the immediate term, people like you said, Mike, in rural parts of the United States, or indeed disadvantaged parts of the world where they don't have the infrastructure developed at all yet. Those people could get much quicker and better care without having to wait. Then there's the longer term, even more beautiful tier of proactive screening of, I guess, the entire world, or hopefully large segments of it. And
Yep.
that's not that long from now when we could do the equivalent of what colonoscopy is supposed to be.
Yeah, right now, if we need to do an EGD on someone, I think we've covered that it's definitely a heavy footprint, right? It's not just one trip to the hospital. It's usually several. There's sedation. There's, essentially you're just sliding tubes into the human body, which is non-trivial. You could tear, you could abrade, right? And that's why a procedure like an upper endoscopy comes after a relatively healthy process, to make sure that it's appropriate. And we think that with PillBot, the costs should be quite low. The risk profile should be much lower than an upper endoscopy risk profile. And with telemedicine, you don't even physically have to go to the hospital. And so, from a basic accessibility perspective, we are hoping that PillBot will extend the reach of modern healthcare to hundreds of millions of people that might not otherwise have access to it.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said earlier, the potential implications of it are when you really think it through, it's pretty mind blowing. Let's jump into the demo. You guys have something set up for us where we'll actually get to see this thing in action.
While Chris is getting that set up, one thing we decided to do from the very beginning of the PillBot adventure was take as much of the R&D process as possible and share it publicly. And the reason for this is that we feel that over time, if we are as transparent as possible with normal people all around the world, um, for one, it's really fun. I love to share this adventure with people. But the other part of it is we're kind of hoping to show a new kind of, like, it's not entirely open source, but we are trying to share the adventure so that people can kind of see the technology evolving over time. Where,
Yeah.
back in 2019, our prototype was the size of a football. And that isn't necessarily, looks like we've got the link shared in here. So this is our fish tank demo. We shot this video, what, how many days ago?
Just a couple,
Just a few,
17
right?
days ago.
The hope here is just to show people a process that began with these giant, funny prototypes and has relatively quickly matured into, what you might imagine a little swimming robot pill would look like. These days, a typical PillBot is going to have this clear front with headlights and a camera, and basically the eyeball portion. And then in the back part of the PillBot, you see thrusters and electric motors and little propellers that are inside tiny little lumens. And basically, by being able to squirt water in many different directions, we're actually able to take this relatively neutrally buoyant capsule and maneuver it in 3 dimensions in a rather elegant way that is quite reminiscent of the tip of a doctor's endoscope. And that's kind of where we hope that when you look at the market for endoscopic devices or the number of procedures done with those devices in these areas of the anatomy, people start to get pretty excited.
Where are you guys at in the regulatory process with this?
We met with the FDA and had a fantastic meeting following up on our pre-sub application just a couple weeks ago. So we're going to do trials, an OUS pilot study in New Zealand about 2 months from now. We'll do the larger scale trials at the Mayo Clinic in Florida in the middle or second half of 2024, then probably do the official application with the FDA. So seeking FDA clearance as of late 2025 and entering the market as soon as we can after that.
And while we need to, respect basic privacy, what we can say from the pre-sub meeting is that the folks at FDA who are examining PillBot expressed a bunch of enthusiasm. It was
Sure.
amazing to actually be on a call with biomedical engineers who are trying to get the best technology to, patients here in the United States and then, to the world beyond. And it was actually a fairly benign meeting. I mean, we had a lot of engineering questions. We wanted to say, here's our huge approach to how do you take this kind of a high power battery safely into the human body? And folks at FDA had a fair amount of agreement. We're going to be throwing every kind of test you can imagine at this little swimmer. But the neat thing was that at no time in the process did anyone just say, this is a non-starter. This isn't the kind of thing we can do, in 2023 and 2024. This is technology that is exciting. We see the value proposition, and we see a very realistic pathway to getting this approved.
I would say it's even more than that. So they want rigor and safety, of course, but they understand this as part of the natural progression and development. There are trends converging here, right? Trends toward telemedicine, toward miniaturization, toward democratization and access to care. There's a desire for this product that underpins the entire GI space.
I think what Chris and I are so excited about is PillBot should be a really fun adventure for Ediatx and, initially for the GI community. But while we are working with FDA to make PillBot, an accessible tool to gastroenterologists around the world, we're also working with FDA to bring up the regulatory infrastructure for these little tiny robots. So, for example, how do you do appropriate HIPAA compliance in a telemedicine environment?
Right.
That's going to be a fun adventure. Chris and I are super excited to appropriately lock that down and figure out how we go ahead and do it, because not only does it set the stage for where we want to go beyond PillBot, say with the PillSurgeon or the microsurgeon, right? Eventually, maybe we'll do brain surgery. But while we get this first product locked in, all of a sudden it becomes this super useful precedent for anyone else that wants to take advantage of this whole ecosystem and basically say, hey, I've got an idea. Let's use, the basic foundation that Endiatx has created and go do something crazy and cool, right?
Yeah.
So we're actually kind of hoping to be collaborators in this space as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Codes, sorry.
No, go ahead, Chris.
Well, the codes need to be determined so that we can proceed efficiently. But again, this is a categorical improvement. So from a business planning perspective, you're not going to have to convince people to try this as an incrementally better alternative. This is the paradigm shift that has been hoped for and demanded by the whole sector, and they will gladly use it as soon as we deliver it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very akin to the very early stages of AI and what those software companies were how they were working in conjunction with the FDA to kind of build the plane as they were flying it from a regulation perspective and what that process should look like, not only for submission but approval and post market you know um,
Well,
process.
well,
So
Mike,
it's
I'm glad to hear you mention AI, right? Because that is central to the conversation we're having in the tech community right now.
yep,
And as many people will know, the foundation that AI is built upon is large blocks of useful data. Data is how we make AI real. And if we were to, say, create an AI data set in the GI tract today, the way that we would have to do that would be with endoscopes, going around, poking around, looking. And data that we gather from endoscopes, unfortunately, is going to carry with it accessibility problems, right? It's expensive, it's risky, it
yep.
involves all these hospitalizations. The thing that we're getting really excited about is that PillBot should actually be a fountain of cheap, accessible data with a relatively low risk profile, which is really exciting to think, if we can help be a fountain of data pouring into the medical community, that might actually see some benefit on the AI side eventually.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Being able to swallow a pill and the physician being able to review the films and make their diagnosis, but physicians miss things, and we're seeing more and more that these AI platforms are catching a large number of things that these physicians are missing, and so it's kind of a belt and suspenders approach, right? Which I
That's
think
right. And
could be
and I think
powerful.
it's very important that I say one thing because I've used the word safety. I've talked about, be trying to be a effective moving eyeball in the stomach. It's very important that we state clearly that until we get through FDA trials, we can't tell you right now that PillBot is safe and effective. What I
Right.
can tell you right now is that we're working very hard towards that goal. So
Yeah.
I just want to make that really clear that we are right now an R&D project. We're just about to enter IRB clinical trials. That's the current phase of the company. You can imagine that, once we've done a fair amount of looking around with these little tiny robot pills, I think that the very next step is going to be, okay, what else can we do with this platform, right? If we can deliver you three-dimensional mechanical motion, what
Yep.
kind of a tool would you want to put on the end of this? Where else in the body might we go?
That was my next question. What future applications and I think one of the most interesting questions is not just what future applications, but what future capabilities do you foresee the PillBot having?
Well, I think we need to immediately give a nod to some of the amazing tech that's actually under development right now. So if we go over to Paris, over in France, I think it's Bertrand Duplat
Robote.
of Robote. They're actually doing rice grain sized microsurgeons in the brain. They're actually
Wow.
going straight there. I think that their mechanism of moving around is slightly different. I'm not sure if it's entirely telemedicine, but what I can say is that it's drastically less invasive. And the CEO's mother, unfortunately, perished due to a glioblastoma. So this is a very personal mission. And so I think with PillBot, we also are similarly interested in how small can we go, and then what other areas of anatomy would be relevant. In the short term, probably the rest of the GI tract, maybe in larger areas like the large intestine. That's an obvious place of interest for us. But honestly, I would love to see PillBot go to rice grain size. I think some of the power options available to us might actually get very interesting on the tech side because there's some amazing developments on that side we might be able to leverage. But yeah, I mean, imagine if you could have several little microsurgeons, parked on a tumor location. And instead of feeling like you had to do the entire surgery in just a few hours, what if you had a few days or a few months, and these little tiny surgeons could actually, just kind of slowly and methodically work away at a tumor. Maybe they could inject radio enhancers. Maybe they could be taking tissue samples, and maybe we could even be doing lab on chip kind of things where you're analyzing in real time and then feeding that information back to doctors so they can come up with targeted treatment plans. Right now, I think we could carry this all the way into the dreams of science fiction. But the thing that we're excited about is that just PillBot in the human stomach, I think, represents a pretty big leap forward. And so hopefully people feel,
100%.
yeah,
It's a leap forward that's desired and again expected by the space because the idea of an endoscopy is relatively antiquated. It's actually been around for more than a century to
Yeah.
insert a probe with a tether. So that whole area, the GI doctors that we talk to, they are expecting and waiting for this as a shift in their fundamental workflow.
Yeah. What great segue. When could we see PillBot 1 hit the market?
Probably early 2026, right? So put it at about 2 years from now, assuming we've carried very efficiently through the FDA process. We'll introduce it first in the United States, probably from the hub of the Mayo clinics and spokes outward to other GI clinics in the United States, and then immediately seek classification and recognition by the bureaucracies around the world to expand globally.
yeah, we
Yeah.
were very careful to pick gastroenterologists to join the board. We have several leading GIs as investors in the company, just because they said this is just personally so exciting. They wanted some skin in the game, and they wanted access to the tech as it's being developed. Um, and they were able to build us a scientific advisory board of leading GIs from all around the world. Because I mean, if you have a stomach, you're probably someone that we would like to, maybe one day heal, or maybe one day, maybe even better, screen
Deliver
against
good news too.
fertility, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's to be able to deliver good news to somebody that, hey, you don't have cancer. It's just, you just got gastritis, and take these, pills for a couple days and you'll feel better. I mean, that,
Or, well, sorry, or that you do have cancer, but we've caught it early enough to save your life rather than
right.
go through the delay of several visits where you lose that last 6 to 12 months and then you
That's
find out
right.
you're terminal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And for me, in my experience, um, mine was so bad. The only reason I got to go in and get an endoscopy is because the pain was so bad. I ended up in the ER, and they sent me home with Percocet. And
wow.
and then finally, you get the attention of the powers that be, and they say, okay, we'll give you an endoscopy. And it turned out to be gastritis, which was shocking to
And
me. But yeah, no, I mean, there's huge effect there. I want to be sensitive to time and get you guys out of here as scheduled. But uh, just, can you share where the company is at from like a developmental perspective? Are you guys still seed round, A round? Where are you at?
We're at the end of what we call Seed Plus, and we're looking to raise a Series a proper priced round, probably in Q2 of 2024. So we are actually still taking investment, and as we cross these key milestones, it becomes
yeah, well, what we can say right now, just to sort of at a high level, is that we're sort of at the tail end of our seed stage. But as you can see behind us, we're no longer a garage startup, and we haven't been for quite some time. People have been coming in to support us and really lift us up so that we can accelerate. 2024 is definitely the year where we really get onto the world stage with our clinical trials.
Yeah.
If, if we're able to stick to the project plan, we might actually be completely done with even the enrollment in the FDA trial if we can really pull this off. So we've got a series of IRBs coming up. First, outside of the US in New Zealand under an amazing doctor, Dr. Cam Shower, close friends with Viv Kumbari here in the United States. And then we'd like to go to the Mayo Clinic to do an IRB trial, say mid-year. and then we'd like to enroll a proper FDA IDE, right? And
Yeah.
so from where we are now, if we look forward 1 calendar year, I think it's going to be an amazing year for the entire team.
Yeah, it's really exciting, guys, and kudos to you for accomplishing as much as you have with the limited amount of funding that you've had to take to get there. It's a testament to how hard you guys have worked, the team you built, and the persistence and commitment
It's
that you guys have shown in terms of moving the initiative forward. And I think I know you guys have had some pretty high profile investors come in. I think all of that is just a testament to what you've built, and that you're creating something, Chris, to your point, that you don't have to sell people on the concept of it. This makes sense. You just have to build something that works, and that's safe
it's
and cost effective.
it's a pretty amazing time, and I really want to give a nod and take a moment to speak about the engineers who are making this possible, because what we've seen this past year has been the eyes of Silicon Valley have turned to Endiatx, and we're beginning to get all this amazing inbound interest from the engineering and tech community. We have some of the most passionate engineers in the world now asking if they can be a part of this.
Yeah.
And our top engineers are starting to get insane job offers to go, to other companies. And we recently had our chief engineer turn down, all I can say is massive Silicon Valley money, right?
Right.
And he got this wonderful offer, and he said, "Hey, thank you so much. That honors me. But my adventure is at Endiatx because, to be honest, most of us feel that PillBot is just the coolest thing we've ever had the opportunity to work on. And it's become this really personal adventure. It feels like we're a little family over here in Hayward building these little robot pills."
It absolutely does, and people appreciate that it's tangible. I mean, when Tori and I are at trade shows, there are very few other people who can put something in your hand while they're looking you square in the eye and say, "Oh, this is so cool," right?
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
few.
And then swallow it.
Well, of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
One thing we can tell you, Mike, is that we have recently launched a project internally that we call Project Alpha. And Project Alpha is all about us leaving the concept that PillBot might be an entry-level endoscope, but through telemedicine is an amazing tool that can help millions of people. With Project Alpha, we're starting to ask the question, what if we had one of the best cameras in the world on the front of this thing? What if we were producing imagery that could compete with any endoscope, right?
Yep.
And I don't know exactly how far Alpha is going to take us, but I will say that we are starting to get really excited. There are communication protocols that have recently been okayed over at FCC that are starting to give us the chance to look into, I mean, what if instead of throwing 1 or 2 megapixels per second, what if we were throwing 20 megapixels per second,
Yeah.
right? Like I see a version of PillBot where it is head to head competing with anything from the world of endoscopes. And that's going to be a lot of fun because as the AI tools come in here and they slowly start to take away the boring and tedious work, as the fidelity of these remote instruments starts to step up, as the telemedicine starts to really get locked in, you're going to start to see, I think, an evolution on what is healthcare and who gets healthcare and how far can healthcare reach. Like, we do this right, PillBot is almost like a time machine. I think it's a tragedy when we diagnose a cancer because it's symptomatic, because you feel it. That means it's probably too late to do what we need to do to cure it.
Yep.
We need to go back in time. And the way that we can do that with the patient population is to extend the reach of modern medicine to people everywhere. And for an individual patient, we have to get in earlier. And so
Yeah.
this is where we start to get excited.
Yeah. Well, especially if you took it, if you get it to the point where, and listen, this is a ways out, but you get it to a point where you can put it on the shelf in Target, Walgreens, and CVS, and they take it home. They click on the QR code on the back of the thing, and that, and that it's like a, just like a Cologuard, and then
It's
all of a sudden you swallow it. There's a doc that's assigned to, review your images, and it could be an annual diagnostic, just like, a physical, at any given level. So,
Our
you
our hope is just first, let's do the hard work. Let's make sure that we can show safety and efficacy. I think when we roll PillBot out first, it's probably going to be in a clinic setting, right? We're going to do a relatively modest clinical trial where we have laser focus on every aspect of this, make sure this thing is safe, make sure it's effective. Then we're going to take a step back and see, okay, how far can we push the telemedicine angle? And then in the years to come from there, I think with the data sets that are being built, I think with the AI tools that FDA are getting excited about, I see a very bright future for this.
Yeah. No, it's really exciting. And I'd love to have you guys back in a year or 18 months and do a recap show on where you guys are at, because I think it's going to be I think you will have made some pretty significant advancements in between now and then, and couldn't be more excited for you
Mike,
guys and for
Mike,
patients.
we're gonna give you a call as soon as we have that new camera on the front. I think that's gonna be a big compelling leap forward. I hope what we've shown people today is that tiny little robots swimming around in the human body is probably a real thing. That's coming. That's gonna be real soon.
Yep.
The next step that Chris and I are working on is, okay, how much of that market can we go jump into, right? How many of those patients can we actually treat?
Yeah. No, it's great. Really exciting, guys. Thank you again for taking the time out of your day to come on the show. Couldn't be more excited about sharing this story with the audience. And like I said, definitely excited to have you guys back on the show and to recap all that happens in between now and then. And wishing you continued success.
it's been a real pleasure, Mike. Thanks to you and your crew, and we look forward to it.
Thank you so much.
That's it for this edition of the Bleeding Edge of Digital Health. We'll catch you guys on the next episode.